All right, to replace your background with a gradation, you choose the gradient tool. You choose from the scale options up here, and then you can actually pick the colors. And if they're open in Photoshop like this, I can actually steal them. So I want to go from this color. I can add one in the middle, go to this color, and move that down here. And go all the way to this red. And it gets a little chunkier there, so about like that. And this feels like it could be a little bit brighter in the middle. So right there I'm going to take one and actually brighten it up just a little bit. Maybe not quite that much. All right, so now I have some variation. This is what's called a linear gradation. You can see it previewed up here. And to use a linear gradient, you're using the gradient tool. I want to be on the layer I want to replace, which is this. And I simply paint straight down like this. I click and drag to show the direction of it. If I want it to be a perfectly straight line, I can hold down Shift. And it will paint in that gradation for me. Pretty neat, right? Okay, now I can take this layer from before, select the empty space here, and cut it out of this by just moving the selection. Selections move between layers as you select them, and now just delete it. And then turn my image on. Okay, so that's how you replace a background. I'm not done yet, because if I take the opacity down a little bit, using my stylus, which makes this so much easier, I can now use an eraser at 100% opacity, at maybe a 30% or so hardness, so not too hard, maybe about 40, right in the middle. Fairly small size, and I can very carefully cut myself out without getting any of that background. And I can use Command plus to zoom in and the space bar to move around just to get my edges. But what's funny is, in order to match this, those edges are going to get really fuzzy anyway. So I'm just showing you, for any kind of background replacement, this is how you can go about it. It can be tricky to get right. But then when you take that layer back to 100%, you'll see that that looks pretty believable. So let me finish that up really quick. Now you can use quick selection tools sometimes for this. So I'm going to go back to the layer where my head is, and I'm going to use the quick selection tool and just kind of select all of this space around my ear, all of this space around my hair, all of this space here. It's okay that it's getting some of the frizz. And then I can invert that selection. Remember we learned that? Invert it, so now it's the inside. And now I can use that as kind of a nice stencil template for erasing. So it doesn't allow me to go too far. That makes it harder to make a mistake. The reason I like using a stylus is I can press really lightly and just erase tiny things out, or press harder and cover more ground. It's pretty forgiving. And a lot of those Photoshop disasters that I showed you on that website just come from mistakes with layers and mistakes with cutting out too much or too little when doing things like replacing backgrounds. So I just cut away a little bit too much there. So I just go back in my history, I Command Z it and do it again. Now, because I'm going to be softening the edge so much, it's actually better for me to not quite erase enough than to erase too much from this background. Okay, now I need to do some content replacement. So not just replacing the background, but I actually need to build a shoulder for myself. And sometimes that happens too. It's another way that we try to match format. But to make the shoulder a little bit quicker, I'm going to do that thing where I use the quick selection tool. This time, I'm on the layer with my photo. Deselect everything. Now I'm going to try to select inside my shirt. Stencil it that way. And then, whoops, make sure I get on the right layer. Then erase away from that. And that works. Quick selection works well. Magic wand works well as long as there's a lot of contrast between the edge of what you're trying to select. My skin matches this background so much that I had to do that part by hand. All right. So now you can see the shoulder that I need to build in. And to do that, I am simply going to take a chunk from this shoulder. It's going to look sloppy, but it's going to get very reprocessed anyway. Take a chunk from that, hit Command J to duplicate it onto its own layer, hit Command T to transform it and flip it, and then move it over and place it in. It doesn't match exactly, so now I use image adjustments, levels, take its shading down. I just had to wear plaid that day. And levels is the first step. The next is saturation, some sort of color balance, and I want to just darken it a little bit overall and take a little bit of that saturation down because it's in shadow. Right. And now I can use my eraser. This is another place very commonly where you're seaming exposures together where Photoshop disasters can happen. I'm going to blend one layer into the next layer using a low opacity eraser. Try to find natural seams to bring together, because there's a lot of overlap. And build that shoulder that is missing. Looks like I can go a little bit darker. Now I just finished cutting it out, making it what I want it to be. Getting this original silhouette working. Where am I? Magic wand. Left inside here. Make sure I trim that shoulder. Oops. Select inverse. Cut from the outside. There we go. Sloppy, but it will work. So those are all the ways we can adjust format and processing. Some more ideal than others, right? Obviously not ideal to have to replace content completely, or even to have to replace the background. But using the rules and grammar of photography, the same as if we were in a dark room, this stuff is possible. You just do it with multiple exposures. To cut it out, I'm going to go back to 100% opacity eraser, a little bit harder edge, and seam it all together. Okay, now I turn on the background at full opacity, and there I have it. Shift that shoulder just a little bit, maybe warp it into place. It won't win any beauty contests, but it matches the format. Now I need a pedestal, right? So I can go to my original image source. I can kind of draw in a selection what I'm missing, which is something kind of like this. Roughly. Try to get it all contained in one nice selection. Okay. And now I'm going to copy it from, let's see, let's do it from the background. Duplicate it, move it up to the top. And I need to change its color. Select around it, select inverse, and I'm going to fill it with kind of a dark red gradient. But first I'll just do a solid color. And I can select that color right from the Photoshop color. Fill it in. Then I'll fill it in with a gradient, and the gradient should remember me. But I can also do that gradient at a lower opacity. Kind of